The news hitting Washington today is sending shockwaves through the entire political world. What started as a legal dispute has now exploded into something much bigger, something that has lawmakers using words like impeachment and removal in a way we haven't heard in decades. For the first time in modern history, a sitting president is facing the possibility of being pushed out of office, not because of an election and not because of a scandal from the past, but because of a court ruling that the White House is refusing to follow. This isn't just another political fight. It's becoming a moment that could reshape how presidential power works in the United States. The story began when the Supreme Court ruled that certain actions taken by President Trump overstepped the limits of his authority. When the ruling came out, legal experts said it was one of the strongest, clearest decisions the court had issued in years. But instead of accepting the decision and making changes, the president continued moving forward, as if the ruling didn't apply to him. That single choice is what has now sparked a full constitutional showdown between the executive branch and the judicial branch. Washington hasn't seen anything like this in generations. Inside the Capitol, the reaction was immediate. Lawmakers from both parties rushed into private meetings as soon as news broke that the president was ignoring the court's order. Reporters waiting outside committee rooms said members walked out looking stunned, frustrated, and in some cases genuinely worried about what would happen next. Even lawmakers who have been loyal to Trump for years were suddenly choosing their words very carefully. They know that the Constitution requires the president to follow the law, and ignoring the Supreme Court puts Congress in a position where they have to respond. Some members began quietly drafting impeachment language the same day the ruling came down. Normally, impeachment is long, complicated, and political. But this situation is different. The issue isn't based on rumors or private testimony. It's based on a public ruling from the highest court in the country. Anyone can read it. Anyone can see what the court ordered. So the question isn't whether Trump broke the law. The question is whether Congress will allow a president to ignore the Supreme Court without consequences. That's why the process is moving faster than anyone expected. Meanwhile, statements began coming from lawmakers, who almost never criticized the president. Some of them said openly that the court's decision has to be respected, even if they disagreed with it personally. Others warned that allowing any president to ignore the court would damage the Constitution itself. Those comments alone are historic. In past controversies, members of the president's party usually closed ranks around him. But this time, many of them are stepping back, unsure how much further the situation will go. Behind the scenes, legal teams on both sides have been preparing for what could become one of the biggest constitutional disputes in American history. Scholars say that the Supreme Court's ruling is extremely rare because it directly limits the president's powers, and defying it creates a crisis that no one has a clear playbook for. Normally, presidents try to avoid this situation entirely. Even when they disagree with the court, they comply with its decisions. That's why this moment feels so unusual. The normal guardrails that keep the branches of government from clashing are being tested in real time. As this is happening, everyday Americans are watching closely. Some are defending the president, saying he's fighting for what he believes is right. Others say that no leader should be able to ignore the Supreme Court, no matter the reason. Protests have been forming in major cities, with people calling for action from Congress. Phone lines at congressional offices are ringing non-stop. Staff members say they've never seen the public respond this quickly to a legal decision. People feel the stakes, and they feel them deeply. The White House has continued releasing statements insisting that the president acted within his rights. They say the court misunderstood the situation, and that the president has the authority to continue his policies. But experts point out that once the Supreme Court makes a ruling, that ruling becomes the law of the land. That's why ignoring it opens the door to impeachment. It isn't about politics. It's about separation of powers, the foundation that keeps any one branch of government from taking too much control. Members of Congress are now wrestling with what their next steps should be. Some believe that if they don't act, future presidents could claim the same power and weaken the court forever. Others worry that impeachment will divide the country even more. But the pressure is growing on both sides. If the president continues to ignore the ruling, lawmakers may feel they no longer have a choice. They took an oath to protect the Constitution, and they know the whole world is watching to see whether they uphold it. Markets are already reacting to the uncertainty. Investors don't like not knowing what the government will look like in a few weeks, and economists say a long political fight could affect everything from interest rates to employment numbers. Agencies inside the government are also waiting for clarity. Some aren't sure whether to follow the court or follow the president, and that hesitation is slowing down important federal operations. The longer the crisis drags on, the more complicated things become. Internationally, U.S. allies are watching carefully as well. Some leaders have expressed concerns about stability in Washington at a time when global tensions are already high. America's reputation as a country where the rule of law stands above everything else is being tested, and the outcome of this fight will send a message to the world about how strong those institutions really are. As the week continues, all eyes are on Congress. If the president continues refusing to comply with the court, impeachment becomes more likely by the hour. The House could move quickly, and the Senate could be forced to hold a trial sooner than anyone expected. What happens there may decide whether the president stays in office or whether this moment becomes one of the most dramatic turning points in modern political history. No matter where people stand politically, there's one thing almost everyone agrees on. This is a moment America has never experienced before. The questions being asked right now are bigger than one person or one party. They are questions about how the country works, how power is shared, and whether the Constitution can still hold firm when the pressure is this intense. The next few weeks are going to shape the future in a way that will be remembered for generations. And whatever happens, the country will come out of this moment changed.